So, in the last part, I will try to develop aspects of our anti-capitalist project in the light of the analysis I gave. This analysis was meant to show you the urgency and the absolute necessity for another system, because the capitalist system is not only exploiting workers and farmers, the capitalist system is destroying our lives at all levels, and especially the normal people, because the rich can escape in a certain sense. So the anti-capitalist critique is both against the economic system and all its consequences, against the ecological consequences of capitalism. You cannot separate both. That's a new consciousness which has emerged first amongst the Greens and the ecological parties, but it is now in our currents, in radical left organizations, more and more present. So the ecological crisis has become an integral part of the consciousness that we are living through, in fact, what we in the Fourth International have called a crisis of civilization. So it's not only the economics, and it's not only by nationalizing the economy that we will solve the problem. There's much more to do. Our anti-capitalist project has to give in what we propose, and also in daily politics, an absolute priority to save energy in order to lower the emissions in the coming years. That's not an ideological proposal, it's a very practical proposal. We have said that according to the International Panel on Climate Change, lowering the global emissions has to start at the latest in 2015. And don't say that it's exaggerated. Ask the people in Manila today. I mean, their city is flooded. So we have to start to lower emissions. And if we want to be part of a real movement against the global warming problems, then we have to know the problems and to know practical proposals for which to mobilize. We don't, as revolutionaries, we should not use the climate crisis as another ideological reason for criticizing capitalism, saying, you say capitalism is bad. That's not enough. We are talking about realities, about real lives of people. So, what are the possibilities? First of all, suppress every useless and harmless production. First of all, the military production. Army, weapons, airplanes, drones, and go on. The whole military-industrial complex should be criticized. So we should support all campaigns for disarmament, all campaigns against landmines, all campaigns against military expenditure in our own countries and worldwide, all campaigns against NATO plans. So this is linked to the pollution of the atmosphere and the pollution of the earth. So against the army and armament, against a lot of harmful products, like the growing number of chemicals which are produced and put in the environment. We don't know what the consequences are of those products. Fertilizers who are chemical fertilizers who are polluting in a lot of countries and so on. But there's also useless production which gives emissions, like advertisements. The pharmaceutical industry spends more on advertisements than on research. A second aspect of reducing emissions is, of course, energy efficiency. Energy efficiency doesn't mean that the priority must be to put solar panels on every lamp in the street. Energy efficiency is, first of all, rehabilitation of houses in the north, in the rich countries, where houses are very badly insulated. And with simple products, you can make thicker walls, better roof insulation and so on. The energy used for warming houses is a huge amount of the energy bill of any country with a colder climate. Change the norms for electrical machines, electrical devices, make them energy efficient. There's a slight movement going on in that way, but it should be improved a lot. It can be improved, and the same goes for the engines of cars. Now, the most important line we should have is look at problems in society which are directly linked to emissions. One of the most complicated problems is urbanization. So in the rich countries and also in more and more developing countries and emerging countries, you see that the poor are chased out of the city centers, have to live in the suburbs, so this increases transport and a lot of pollution. I visited recently Istanbul, which is a beautiful city, has been a beautiful city, but now it's a mega city of 14 million people with motorways in the center, 6-lane motorways along 2 beautiful coastlines on the Asian and the European part. They want to increase that conurbanization, make it grow even further to the north of Turkey, polluting water resources and destroying forests. So urbanization can be a powerful fight against emissions and for lowering emissions. The problems of, that's also quite complicated, but you have to look in concrete cases. The whole system of production, which is following now everywhere the Toyota model of just-in-time. Just-in-time means that you have more and more division of labor and transport going on with parts for products that then finally are assembled somewhere. The just-in-time production, the dispersed production of parts of products, the subcontracting of production also causes a lot of extra transport and a lot of emissions. So there is a direct link with the labor movement's fight, possible fight against the destruction of big factories and the subcontracting everywhere, worse conditions for workers, but also worse conditions for the climate. An example of that in France is the big airplane Airbus, the direct competition with Boeing. Now Airbus parts are made all over the world, and especially outside the Eurozone, because the euro is too expensive. So they are making a number of parts of Airbus more and more in China. Then those parts are flown back to Toulouse in France to be assembled in the final airplane. So this is a totally unnecessary transportation cost. And this is not a graph, this is not scientific data, but it's just to remind you that big oil companies are really big oil companies. They have the power to destroy the environment everywhere. That's what they are trying to do now on the North Pole ice, on the Alaska coasts, along Malaysia, on the coast of East Timor, on the coast of Brazil, where they are trying to drill in deep ocean layers to get gas and oil. Gas and oil reserves are unknown, but it's for sure that it costs more and more to find new sources, and they are doing everything to continue their work. And one of the worst things which are happening since the last 5 years is the run for shale gas. Shale gas is so it's natural gas, locked in shale. Shale is a kind of rock. And to liberate the gas out of that, yes, these are the main fields which are known, so-called known. So you see this here, the famous Alaska shale gas reserves. Huge shale gas reserves in the United States, the possibility, the potential in Brazil. Here, of course, this is extremely cold, but they could do it South Africa, parts in North Africa here, and Western Europe, the whole Poland, Germany, the Netherlands part, Belgium a bit, and in France, especially in the region around Paris, and here in the United Kingdom, and then Eastern Europe. Here I don't know which countries it are, but it's China, yeah. And Australia. So these are known shale gas reserves. This is a recent and new development, and the United States especially are actively doing it in horrible working conditions by using a technology which is called the hydraulic fracturing of fracking, where you see the cracks where the gas can come from. These cracks are enlarged by sending under very hot, high pressure water down, together with a lot of water, with toxic chemicals to dissolve those rocks and to get out the gas, which can then be pumped up through the water table, and with an enormous, at a very deep level, 3,000 meters. It's one of the most polluting and simplistic technologies you can imagine. It's like taking a hammer and then putting chemicals on it and extracting the few gas which is in it. Now the amount of reserves on that is still uncertain. I think they are overestimating it. But at the moment, the United States are producing so much natural gas by fracking that the prices of natural gas have gone down, and the main purpose they have is that they would become more and more independent of the Middle East. That's a geostrategic consideration. But it is destroying huge areas in the United States. Already there are regions where in villages, and it's always in rural areas as much as possible, where the water is contaminated. So people cannot use the regular water circuits anymore. They have to buy bottles. The working conditions are like in the 19th century gold rush. People are unemployed in the States, come from everywhere and go work there, live in barracks, live there and work there for 3 months, then take their money and go away. It's horrible, horrible. There is some films made about the fracking history, and there is some opposition coming up. In Europe there is opposition against it, in many countries, luckily. So at the level of energy transition, the urgency is the following. Stop the use of coal. Stop the use of coal. This is very difficult if there's no general measures in a country to do that. For instance, in Europe, in Poland, there is still a lot of coal mining done, and the union of those coal miners is very combative, very fighting spirit. And of course they are against the closure of their mines. And the left in Poland is against the closure of those mines because they say it's the basis of one of the most militant parts of the workers' movement. If we close those mines, then we lose that. So these are difficult discussions. We should also, we can come back to that later, we should also stop opening new reserves of fossil fuel. So no fracking, no deep sea, deep ocean drilling, no oil extraction from the North Pole Sea, and so on. Stop, don't exploit the oil which is in the Amazon. And in order to have enough energy, shift to renewables, shift in a planned way to renewables. What we also need for the climate is a major real reforestation programs. Not for tourism as in Costa Rica, but real reforestation of whole regions. Regions like Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, were rich tropical forests before the Vietnam War. The Americans destroyed it first with chemicals, with Agent Orange, and now it's being deforested, it becomes desertified. So reforestation programs are possible and are very important for the whole of the world. Now, you cannot ask the poor people in Laos to pay for the reforestation of their mountains. For this, we must reallocate resources from the rich imperialist countries to the global south. Absolutely. Now, you see, what I explain here seems enormous, yeah? But we must put forward those demands and keep looking at our national and regional realities to be part of movements who will demand those things. Because there's also another thing, renewable energy, everyone says it's not reliable, it goes up and down, during the day you have sunlight, during the night it doesn't produce, wind it goes up and down, and so on, okay? But still, the renewable energies, which all are derived from the sun, don't give us emissions. So, I mean, we have to shift to those other technologies. And for that we need much more research. And we need the conviction in society that the so-called cost, which means the profit for the manufacturer, are too high. Well, they will always be too high as long as they are not really generalized. And as long as oil and coal are in fact too low in price. So the cost element is an element which is, or the cost argument is an argument which is used by marketeers and companies. But this should not count for us. This should not count for the climate and for the ecological movement. What counts is the reduction of emissions. So again, it's not an ideological way of thinking, it's a practical way of thinking. If we want to reduce emissions, we have to stop the fossil fuels and we must work with renewables, whatever it costs. You can say that this cost is much lower than the cost of atomic energy, nuclear energy. They have costed the states so much, and nobody knows what the cost of the construction of those nuclear plants will be. You cannot even calculate them. So, and what also is an important element in the renewable discussion is the technologies must be freely available for all countries. So no private patent rights on it, no property rights on it, and the technologies from research centers in the rich countries must be freely available with money to invest in the third world countries. Absolutely. This technology transfer is vital for developing in another way in the poorer countries, and to argue for a green development in the poorer countries, because the position or the lack of consciousness about the necessity of this energy change can be an obstacle in many third world countries, especially in Latin America, I think. South Asia is becoming quite aware of the climate challenge at the moment. Now, when we say renewables, so we say solar panels, we say wind, we say tidal energy, a lot of things, but which ones? It's not that simple. There is a sector of capitalism, green capitalism, which also is investing in renewables, but with all the crisis phenomena. So I've here a nice Dutch cow, which it's a yellow labels on its ears for European Union regulations, and some windmills behind it. This is a windmill system which floats in the sea. So you can have windmills in a smaller concentration on certain pieces of land where the people can get a subsidy for having it there. You can have windmills, along railways, for instance, where it doesn't harm, where it is not too noisy. You can discuss where you implant the windmills. But the main thing for windmills and other systems is that it should be in common property for the local community, so that the local community can decide how to use those things, and not these mega projects. In California you have those fantastic large wind parks. You have the same developments in the sea in Great Britain and so on. This is a project for solar panels in the south of France, as I remember well, where the mayor in the village gets money for putting that solar panel installation on the land. It's huge. but it takes land away. And it's for a profit, in this case for a local village, but it's not a good way to use solar panels. It's much better to have solar panels on houses. All the roofs everywhere are available free. It doesn't harm anything, it doesn't destroy the landscape. But also there, this is probably, it's in Germany somewhere, a private house, privately owned house. The people get subsidies for putting panels on their roofs. But if you are not a house owner, you can't do anything. If you live in social housing, it's a social housing association which should put the panels on, not at the cost of the people who rent the house. So there is social inequality in the way how solar panels are installed in different countries. Because the subsidies for those solar panel roofs are given to the owners in the sense that they get a high price for the electricity produced on their roof. That high price is paid by the electricity company. The electricity company makes the other consumers pay more money for the energy they get because of the subsidies for the solar panels. So it's quite unjust, this system. It heightens the price for everyone, and the ones who are house owners and have the subsidy, they profit, but people who cannot pay a house, they have to pay more for electricity. So you have to look in your own country again on the policies. How are they implemented? Is it reducing emissions or not? And I think insulation of roofs is much more important for reducing emissions than putting solar panels on house owners' houses. The other problem, hydroelectricity. Hydroelectricity is also renewable in the sense it uses the fact that water runs down. It doesn't produce any emissions. But the huge dams we have seen being built since the Second World War everywhere in the Third World are a big, big problem. This is one of the latest ones in China, destroying the river network, displacing people, flooding large amounts of land, and the technological conception of those mega dams comes from civil engineers from the north, from Western Europe and the United States, like the Hoover Dam. Now, in those northern regions, you have a cooler climate and much less sediment coming into the lake of the dams. Now, in the more southerly regions, the sediments are destabilizing dams. You have more accidents with those dams. So, instead of mega dams, there are a lot of people who are in favor of smaller dams, like someone like Vandana Shiva in India speaks a lot about it, with the ancient irrigation systems, with rivers who are not straight canals, but who are old rivers, and which can be, there can be put small micro dams on it, which will also produce electricity. So instead of the mega projects, which are very often also funded by the World Bank, we should oppose them for the fact that people are chased away, for the fact that landscapes are destroyed, for the fact that this is highly centralized and energy, and it is used to fight differences between countries. It is used in geostrategic discussions and so on. We should be for local dams, again managed by local people who know their landscape, who know their region, and so on. So renewables not always the right thing. I think I will have a few minutes left. So the last thing I wanted to say is that fighting climate change is not a diversion from class struggle. I think I hope everyone is convinced now of it. But the decisions which will be implemented the coming 20 years will be decisive for the climate. I'm not just scaremongering. It is happening, those things. So we cannot view a socialist alternative as we did in the beginning of the 20th century. And with the Russian Revolution, there's a famous quote by Mr. Lenin, Comrade Lenin, who said, socialism means Soviets Soviets are democratic councils, committees. Soviets plus electricity, he said. So democracy plus technological economic development. That was his natural slogan for socialism in a backward country like Russia after the Second World War was in a majority. Now, a lot of people in the radical left still think that this is good, this is enough. Now, we say no, because if you say electricity, you have to say which electricity, how is it produced, is it nuclear energy, is it at the service of local community, or is it centralized, and so on. So there's more to say about our socialist project than just saying we nationalize and we put the factories and the production under the workers' control. For instance, workers' control in Fukushima would not have helped to fight a tsunami with an earthquake and a nuclear plant on top of it. So, with or without workers' control. Nuclear energy is a derivative of nuclear weapons, and nuclear energy is not manageable. It's not manageable. We have every 10 years now a catastrophe, and those catastrophes are so long-lasting. We cannot be in favor of nuclear energy as socialists, as human beings. So, the way we view our socialist alternative must include all the ecological dimensions. It must include the urgency of lowering emissions, and it must include a system which is socially just, of course, so that and to have social justice you need democracy, and to have democracy you need discussing all the problems, and not only the production system but the whole environment. I think that's more or less all. This is too long count. All kind. I want to give you 2 little jokes. And I hope you all know The Simpsons. Who does not know The Simpsons? Everyone knows them. Okay. He's the boss of the nuclear plant. These are the enemies. I'll stop here.